6 years ago when I set up an R&D center for a US company in India. So, in about 3 or 4 years, we hired about 200, 250 engineers from some of the best schools in India. And I had done similar things in the US before, of setting up innovation sort of R&D centers there. And this process was quite interesting, but we had a few observations that we thought were stumbling blocks for us in growth, especially the growth of our innovation engine. I could see there were very bright minds. I could see some of the amazing problem solvers that, best in the world, sort of that kind of class of people we had in the building. But I think the one thing that we found was there was a complete lack of curiosity. So what we started to do was implant, things in the system and observe people as to what they did with it. So I remember that when the first iPhone was launched, we had some brilliant electronics and computer science graduates. And one day I sort of opened up my iPhone and left it in the labs. I was thinking that, people would stumble on it, and it's an attractive new product, right? People would sort of say, hey, what's inside it, right? Just out of curiosity. Or when you're in an HR environment, you throw in an idea of how can macros make that repetitive work in Excel so much easier, right? And you would sort of plant that idea and see how people pick on it. And I started to realize, and I've seen some of that in the US as well. I would not sort of demarcate one country against the other, but there was a marked, lack of curiosity amongst the people to sort of dig in and use. So I think it is almost like my job is to run this process in HR. My job is not to optimize it, right? Or the R&D guy would say, I have this spec for a product, and my job is to create an end product out of it. My job is not to look beyond, right? So we got very curious ourselves, and we said, looks like this is a design problem, right? So we approached it from this whole empathy angle and said, let's not jump into what the reason for this may be. Let's get into a sort of a research to understand where is this coming from. And it's been a long journey, a lot of discussions with professors in universities and other professionals and my colleagues in NASSCOM and things like that. But at the end of the day, that journey led us to the school system. And not even in the high school, it led us to the middle school, the grade 4, 5, 6 of schools. So for about 3 years, I've been working very closely with kids from underprivileged backgrounds, to kids from middle class backgrounds, to kids from highly privileged backgrounds, just to understand how each of them reacts at each of these stages of their lives through school to various elements of digging in, understanding, multidisciplinary approaches to things. So what we noted was that middle class children in India predominantly are on a agenda. And in many cases, that agenda is driven by the parent. The parent has aspirations, whether they were able to meet them themselves in their lives or not. And these agendas would be running their lives. What we found with the underprivileged child was they are fearless. They are very curious. They don't have peer pressure. They don't think before they jump in. They are very open-minded. But again, they lack resources, and their lives are sort of so occupied with inconsequential stuff, right? Just the survival of day to day. So one expects their curiosity to also have an atrophy over time. The very privileged child is living a very different life, right? There is no real aspiration from an education or learning or innovation perspective in most cases. There is no aspiration even on the sports side. So it kind of links us to how we perform in the Olympics and things like that, because a lot of these kids have the ability and the capacity to do amazing stuff in sports. But what you lack in that sense is lack of parent oversight, lack of inspiration, lack of vision, lack of a Sachin Tendulkar in all these areas. And how many kids can play cricket? So they sort of drift away, right? And I'm not generalizing here. That's predominantly what the behavior we saw. And we continued our journey. Ultimately, what we realized was that it's the grade 4, 5, 6 kid who, when you put something in front of them, they're very curious. And as they go through that journey in the regular school system, that curiosity goes away. High schoolers, we found middle class and upper class kids, they are not curious at all. And that's what we see in the product that comes out to the industry. So coming back to industry now, what we said, I think our problem is not about lack of innovative minds. Our problem is about atrophy. Just like you have muscular atrophy in life, if you don't use your muscles, there is curiosity atrophy that we observed. And the question we had to ourselves is, how do you fix it? Right? Some atrophy cannot be fixed, but can this one be fixed? So I've been working with the Stanford School of Education. I've been talking to a lot of people around the world about this particular aspect. And we have found that it indeed can be brought back to life. Right? What our school system and our road system kills can be brought back to life. Ideally, what you would want to see is college admissions based on portfolio of work rather than just standardized test. Right? That a child who has a broader set of skills and who has been creating and tinkering and making things, whether it's a fashion product or whether it's a technology product, doesn't quite matter. It's mostly multidisciplinary. So it's a mix of arts and the mix of the sciences, the mix of the empathy towards an end customer, a solution to clean water, or a solution just to bug your sibling and booby trap their room, right? Anything, that's a portfolio, that's a creation of application of knowledge. Ideally, that portfolio should be part of the admissions process, whether it's in an IIT or in a JNU or Bangalore University, whatever. But that is a different topic for another time. And that's a system that is there for a reason. And the moment you make it portfolio based, you could contaminate the entry process. And that's a big problem in this country, right? Trust